evening, everyone. I am Karen Sepatelli Durand of the Grafton League of Women Voters, and we welcome you tonight to our Candidates Forum. And so, first of all, I'd like to thank all of the candidates and volunteers that helped put this together. This program is being recorded, and it's going to be rebroadcast on local access channels, Charter Channel 191 and Verizon 33. It will also be on our website, on their website as video on demand at graftontv.org. We do not allow others to record this event to prevent possible editing of proceedings. And the link will be available on our Facebook page also. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization working to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens in government. The League does not support or oppose any party or candidate. It does support or oppose legislation after study and consensus of agreement among its members. Tonight, I would like to introduce Amy Smith. She is a member of the League of Women Voters of Topsfield, Boxborough, and Middleton, and she is also on the state board of the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts. And we will turn it over to Amy at this point.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening. Since we could not have a live audience for the forum tonight, the Grafton-Shrewsbury League asked Grafton voters to submit questions for the forum by this past June 5th. The League would like to thank everyone for their enthusiastic response and good questions. We will use as many questions as time allows, sometimes combining similar questions. The estimated time for this forum is about 50 to 60 minutes, including opening and closing statements. A reminder to our candidates, your opening statement is limited to 3 minutes. Answers to questions are limited to 1.5 minutes. Should we have rebuttals, those are limited to 30 seconds. And your closing statement will be 1 minute. We have 4 select board candidates running for 2 3-year terms. They are Donna Stock, Jennifer Thomas, Matthew Offen, and Colleen Roy. We'll start with opening statements. Ms. Stock, would you start?
Thank you, and thank you to the League for finding a format that would allow us to have this forum underneath the pandemic. So my name is Donna Stock, and I'm a candidate for re-election to the board. I've lived in this community for 30 years. I've raised 4 children here. When we first were looking at houses in Grafton, we had a Grafton realtor who showed us several different neighborhoods, and we chose to live on the cul-de-sac at Trinity Ave. Spent 10 wonderful years there, and then moved to another neighborhood as well in the community and lived in that house for 17 years. So we've been tied to the community through all these years, and I have to say, primarily through the different activities in this community that have engaged us. Our children obviously were involved with school activities, we had church activities, we had community activities. I was fortunate enough to have 9 years where I was able to work from home and during that time. And as my kids grew older, I got very involved in a lot of their activities. So I served on PTG committees, I served on the Oktoberfest committee, I served on the school councils, I served on superintendent search committees, I served on 2 school building committees, and then fortunately I was able to be elected and served a 10-year term with the Grafton School Committee. I was served 4 years of that as chair. We had some very difficult times while I was there. We had the economic downturn in late 2000s and very strenuous concerns about our budget and ability for the town to do it. At one point, we only had a 0.3% increase. We also had severe school overcrowding, and we had to bring our community together. The very first time we had a vote, it was for a middle school, and it was defeated. Meant we had to regroup and find something that the community would support. And that turned out to be the Grafton Elementary School on Millbury Street. And then several years later, we made the case again for our townspeople and had funding approved for our new high school. So I say community service is in my DNA. I've learned so much in all of the things that I've been able to do. I've learned things that have helped me in my professional life. I've developed friendships with people that are lifelong from the times that we've interacted on one thing or another. I had the honor of being elected last October when there was a vacancy for this board. The past 7 months have been very interesting. I feel like I've just started what I'd hoped to accomplish as a select board member, and I'm looking for your vote again on June 23rd or by mail-in ballot before then. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Thomas, would you go next?
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Jennifer Thomas, and I am a candidate for re-election to the Select Board. I am currently serving on the Select Board and have been for completed 6 years. I do want to thank the League of Women Voters for allowing this forum. A little bit about my family. We moved to Grafton 18 years ago, my husband Jim and I, when my oldest son was a baby. Luke is now a senior, and he graduating from Grafton High School, 2020. I have a sophomore, Matt, and a freshman, Ellie. So my opening's a little bit different. I just want to make, I hope everybody is safe and healthy. I just feel like we do need to recognize where we are right now today. We're in a very challenging time for both individuals and for our town. People are scared, they're angry, they're stressed, and they're worried about their futures and their loved ones. COVID has put us in a difficult position, and our financial futures are unknown. But we've had difficult times before, and we'll get through it together. Donna just mentioned the difficult time. The 08-09 recession was a very difficult time, but the town managed to make it through without laying anybody off. We have sound financial policies and a talented staff. We are going to get through this downturn as well. There are going to be different opinions on how we move forward, from budget issues to best practices and reopening the town hall to assisting businesses and restaurants as they reopen, and we'll need to work together. I've kind of struggled all day how to convey my experience level. It's hard to condense 6 years into just a couple of minutes. The job of a select board member is one of kind of a jack of all trades. The town has many, many diverse departments, and you need to have a good understanding of a wide variety of information. The select board should support all town departments, and decisions need to be made that are in the best interest of the entire town. I feel like I am the most qualified candidate. I've been on the board for 6 years. I have a tremendous amount of experience. I hope to continue serving the town of Grafton as a select board member. So I'm asking for your vote on or before June 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Often.
Got it. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this terrific event. I'd also like to thank my fellow candidates for participating, and also the people of Grafton who are watching. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Massachusetts. I served in the Massachusetts National Guard and the Army Reserves. I attended Fisher College in Boston, graduating with a Bachelor of Science in Business. I moved to Grafton in 2002 with my wonderful wife, Laura. 18 years later, we have 2 children, Lily and Cooper, that are in the Grafton Public Schools. We've built our life here. While living in Grafton, I've had the privilege of serving on the Planning Board. I'm currently serving on the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, and I'm currently the chair of the Finance Committee. I've also volunteered extensively throughout the town, serving as a Cub Scout den leader for several years, working at various PTG events, and also helping the Grafton Land Trust. In my professional career, I'm on the senior leadership team of an international media and events company. In that role, I direct a global team of that provides technology services to about 15,000 people. I also manage a $10 million shared service budget, and I'm responsible for all of the underpinning contracts that support that budget. I've been in leadership positions for the past 10 to 15 years, and in that time, I've been through 2 significant economic downturns. I know how to manage through a crisis. All of this is to say, I have the knowledge, the skills, the experience, and the passion to be the type of leader that Grafton needs right now and in the coming years. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my priorities. First is long-term planning and forecasting. Grafton creates financial trend reports, but we're not really using them to their full extent. And we need to use our financial data. We need to look at and analyze the trends to make informed policy and budget decisions based on what the data is telling us. Just as important, we need to communicate that information to the public in a way that they can understand it. We need to be budgeting in a way that ensures funding for our essential services. Grafton has a limited budget, and what you fund in that budget and how you manage the trade-offs says everything about your priorities. For me, right now, we have to focus on public safety and education. Those are the foundation of a prosperous town. We need to improve collaboration on the board. We have to get the select board working together to develop a shared sense of purpose and a shared vision for Grafton. Right now, we have competing visions, and it's just not effective because the board is essentially working against itself and not for the town. Finally, we need better engagement with the community. We need to make sure that we have a robust two-way engagement with the people of Grafton. So Grafton, I'll make sure that you as a resident have a voice that's heard, that you have the opportunity to provide input to the board's decisions, and that voters have the information they need when they go to the ballot to make a decision. I would be honored to serve the residents of Grafton as a member of the select board, and I ask for your vote on June 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Roy.
Hello. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting on this event, GCTV for recording, and all the viewers at home taking time out of your day to watch. I'm running for Grafton Select Board because I believe Grafton deserves better. Anybody that's been watching meetings over the last few weeks would agree that a new perspective and change is exactly what is needed on the board. My love of service began when I was in high school. I started as a candy striper, and that has continued throughout my life. Whether I've donated time or donated blood, giving back is something I've always been passionate about. During these challenging times, the strongest quality I'll be bringing to the select board is a new perspective, helping us face these rough roads ahead with outside the box thinking, not bogged down by years of complacency. I'm a member of the Finance Committee with a comprehensive understanding of the budget. I'm the chair of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee that will give us a unique understanding for our long-term capital needs. I have attended every select board meeting in person or on Zoom for the last year and a half, and I'll be able to hit the ground running on day one. I humbly ask for your vote on June 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll start with question 1. This is a 2-part question. If you need me to repeat it when it's your turn, I'll be happy to do that. Question 1. Voters will be deciding soon if they support an override of $4 million to fund schools, public safety, and capital improvements. Do you support the override, and why or why not? Second, what would you say to a town citizen who feels they cannot afford a 2.5 override at this time? And Mr. Often, we'll start with you.
Thank you for the question. I do support the override. I'm going to be voting in favor of it. We have a need for funding our critical services in town, and that includes public safety and education, as you mentioned. There's also a component in there for capital, and capital is something that I'm quite passionate about, and it's something that has been a growing need for several years. So we've got to make sure that we take care of those needs. The problem with it, and what I would say to the person who says they can't afford it, is that these needs don't go away. When you do an override which funds operations, if you wait another year, that the number for that override gets bigger because those needs accumulate, and the amount that you need for an override gets bigger. So what I would say is the time for the override is now. If we wait, it's just going to be more expensive for residents, and I just don't support that position. It's not a good long-term strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Roy.
I do support the override. Grafton was facing a financial crisis before it was invaded by COVID. Our current select board voted unanimously in support of the override because they understood the impact that would have on Grafton without one. Those alarming projections have only gotten worse because of the pandemic. For board members to pull their support of this override is short-sighted and negligent. The override is unavoidable, and delaying it even 1 year will cost our taxpayers more money, and I am tired of paying more. Our expenses are outpacing our revenues just to maintain what we have. Cutting expenses will impact services you've come to expect from Grafton, leading departments to become dysfunctional and eventually failing, all while your tax dollars continue to rise. Current members spoke out against the override, stating they needed more public outreach, and then did nothing to facilitate that public outreach. We need to change this about our leadership. We need to follow through when we say we're going to do something. Thank you.
Ms. Stock.
Thank you. Little clarification. I voted yes in February for the override language to go on a warrant and on the ballot for this year. Subsequently, I voted 2 times no, and that no was for a not now. Since that February vote, this pandemic has affected all of our lives. It has turned this world upside down, and there is so much uncertainty and so much knowledge that we do not have about how this may affect us both short-term and long-term. I'm concerned about the small businesses in town that may not be able to open or may not survive once they do. I'm concerned about the senior citizens in this community who are living on fixed incomes. And I'm concerned about those that have lost their jobs, have been furloughed, have lost their benefits, are facing college tuition costs because their students are supposed to be entering or returning to school next year. There's just too much knowledge that we don't have about what our situation is going to be financially in this town for us to support an override at this time. I mentioned earlier, I was here when we had very difficult budget concerns back in 08 and 09 with that 0.3% increase. We did come up with out of the box and creative solutions, and we worked together. The select board, the finance committee, and the school committee met multiple times and problem solved to come up with a way that we could go year to year so that we could, as I said, hope that we could get beyond it in a position that would make us continue to be strong. We faced overcrowding. It affected our students. The students today are in a better situation than we did when we had those overcrowding situations. Each of our buildings. I fought.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Thomas.
Sorry, unmuting, starting my timer. All right, lots of things to do. So what would I say to a town citizen that says they cannot afford a 2.5 override right now? I get it. I get it. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Businesses are closed, jobs have been lost, and people don't know yet how it's going to affect their finances in the long term. The town doesn't know how it will affect our budget overall. We've made a lot of educated guesses, but we really don't know how much state aid is going to come in or if the federal money that we've applied for through the CARES Act will be enough. I don't believe we should be asking the people of the town at this time for an override. I'm concerned that people won't be able to have their voices heard. People are not going to attend town meeting if they feel unsafe, and their vote, they may not even come out to vote. Now they can get an absentee, but sometimes that's a confusing process. And I'm just concerned that people aren't going to be able to express themselves. If I had known the severity of the effects of the virus back both on people's health and on their finances in March and April, I wouldn't have voted to put the override on the ballot this spring. The original plan was to put it on in October, but then it was changed. Dr. Cummings talks about a Lego analogy. Fiscal year 21 is a step on a Lego, 22 and 23 are when you fall down the stairs. We need to focus on 22 and 23. That's when the school needs the most help. So I am not against an override in general. I'm against the timing of this override now. It's irresponsible to ask now. My time is up, even though I had lots more to say.
Are there any rebuttals?
Yes, please.
Ms. Stock?
Yes, in terms of information, as I said, through school buildings and through other means for any of our community issues, we've had public forums, we've had information, we've gone into people's homes, we've been able to use, at the time, print media, we were able to use websites, etc. We have not had any of those opportunities this time around, and I think it is not, we can't rely totally upon Facebook or other social media. So I'm afraid that people are not getting the information they need to make an informed decision.
Ms. Roy was next, I believe.
I'd like to speak to that Lego analogy a little bit. That analogy was used pre-COVID. And before we were stepping on a Lego, but now FY21 is like a broken arm. Sure, you're still going to be able to get around, but you're in a lot more pain. And FY22 is not going to be falling down a flight of stairs anymore. It's going to be like falling off the roof of your house. It's going to be catastrophic. And we really need to be taking this seriously and talking about it often.
Thank you. Mr. Often, I think, was next.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to address the point of community engagement. So look, towns around Massachusetts that recognize that they're going to be in a financial distress in the coming years, well before they need to put an override on the ballot, they engage with their community to make sure that the community understands the need for it, and they develop a strategy for when that override needs to go on the ballot, looking at other things that might produce tax increases, like debt exclusions. They decide what the number is and the amount of, like, the type of services that are represented in the override, and also how long that override should last. Grafton just didn't do this. We haven't had a strategy for this override since day one. And
Ms.
now
Ross-
here we are, we've put it on. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right.
And did I see Ms. Thomas?
Well, there's a lot of things to read, but I guess I'll go with the last thing. We discussed many strategies to tackle the override. And what was decided on by the select board at the time was a Grafton Sustainability Committee. That Grafton Sustainability Committee is 4 months late on a report. So I had all sorts of ideas how to prepare for the override, but that is the direction that the select board went. And we don't have that. So when you say we're not prepared, we put a plan in place that has not been executed.
Thank you. On to question 2. The town administrator balances the budget every year. Should we be worried about structural deficits, and how is the structural deficit determined? Ms. Roy, we'll start with you.
I think we should be concerned about structural deficits. As I said earlier, our expenses are outpacing our revenues, and that's the definition of a structural deficit. Just to maintain what we have. We're not growing, we're not adding, we're just trying to maintain, and we can't afford it. And the way to correct that a lot of the times is by doing an override or finding new revenue sources. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of new revenue sources as an option, and we did look to an override this year. And as mentioned previously, it did not receive the support from the board that was a normal community should have expected to see. Thank you.
Ms. Stock.
Thank you. We are not in a structural deficit, and we shouldn't be saying things like that or saying it's catastrophic. That doesn't help when the town is up for a bond rating. We were just recently upgraded to AA+. We don't want that type of rhetoric to be going around town and affecting the ability of those bonds to go up when they shouldn't be. I said we don't have a structural deficit. We have a balanced budget every year. We have a spending problem, not a funding problem. There's people who have said that this has been mismanaged for 15 years. I totally disagree. We have been able to build 2 schools with our MSBA funding. We built a new police and fire station. We're building the DPW facility, which has been on our list of things to do for more than 20 years. We're building the library with state funding. We had an override that included school and roads funding that dealt with the fact that we had all these new buildings open and still a growing population at the time that it was funded. Our townspeople have been extraordinarily supportive of our community's needs. This comprehensive list indicates that we took advantage of external funding when offered, we had good bond rates, and we are addressing long-term needs. but we're still in the midst of carrying this debt. We need to provide the community with long-term solutions, not rhetoric. Thank you.
Ms. Thomas.
The definition of a structural deficit is government spending beyond government revenues at times of normal, predictable economic activity. We do not spend more money than we bring in. We do not use one-time revenues to fund operational expenses. We are not in a structural deficit. That is rhetoric that is used to undermine the management of our finances in town. We do have a AA+ bond rating. The discussion that is more relevant in this is wants versus needs. This we're going to have many different perspectives on, but that is really what it comes down to. Is a certain item a need or is it a want? For example, does my 16-year-old need a car or does he want a car? Does he need it to get to work or does he just, it's a nice to have? And those are the decisions we need to make. And those are good conversations to have, but we need to drop this unnecessary rhetoric. It's not helpful to the situation to solve the problem. Thank you.
Mr. Often?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that it's called rhetoric, our structural deficit. So I sat in on a select board meeting where our auditors presented the town audit for the year. And the term that they used was structural deficit. So it's not rhetoric. This is a real thing. It's the accurate term to describe the financial situation that Grafton is in right now. You can't solve a problem if you don't own up to it. Grafton should be talking about our structural deficit every single year. We have to be candid with voters on what our situation is. Otherwise, we're just being disingenuous. I guess the last thing that I'll say on this is I find it fascinating that we have two candidates here that are saying, I support an override, but maybe some other year or some other time. If we're doing repeated overrides, it means we have a structural deficit. That's like the definition of it. So again, it just, the whole thing smacks of a lack of strategy and a lack of being honest with our voters. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there any rebuttals? Ms. Roy, start with you.
I want to thank Ms. Thomas for defining structural deficit like she did. And in her definition, she said the use of one-time funds to balance the budget, which is exactly what was needed to balance the FY21 budget, $190,000 worth of stabilization funds, which the Finance Committee has worked diligently this week to try to rectify, because we do not believe we should be using one-time funds to balance our budget. Thank you.
And I believe Ms. Stock had her hand up too.
I believe that we should have a long-term strategy to bring our deficits down to a more sustainable level, which would enhance our ability to meet our needs. And I also want to clarify, I did not vote for the override. I stated earlier, I voted for it to go on the warrant and the ballot for our town members to have the ability to vote.
Thank you. Question 3. Finding affordable housing in Massachusetts has and always will be a challenge for many families. Please share how you would prioritize affordable housing as it compares to other capital improvement preservation projects. And we'll start with Ms. Stock.
Can you repeat, please?
Finding affordable housing in Massachusetts has and always will be a challenge for many families. Please share how you would prioritize affordable housing as it compares to other capital improvement preservation projects.
We do have the Affordable Trust set up here in this community. There are funds in it right now. There have been some suggestions that we could redirect that. There's also some misconceptions that our tax dollars are being used to fund our super park. That's not true. It's the CPC funds that will be doing that. We do need to weigh everything that's up for capital improvements, capital improvements. I think I'd like to learn more about the Affordable Housing Trust. I think in these times, we are going to have to provide some rent assistance. we are going to have people who are unable to afford the houses that they may have and maybe looking for a different sized house, or some with some enhancement to it, to their funds, to keep themselves in their own homes. So, you know, I'm definitely in favor of it. We haven't looked at all of the priorities of things that can go be funded by this, but that obviously is one of our priorities, especially in these times.
Ms. Thomas.
Hi, yes. Prioritizing affordable housing is very important, and we should be doing it, and we are doing it. There have been many actions taken to and to prioritize which areas of town and what type of housing is needed. We are, when the town is looking at having developers come in to do things, we're now thinking in that way. For example, 8 Pine Street was going to be redeveloped, and the RFP stated that it needed to have some affordable housing. So I think there's a misconception about that it has to come from a certain area. The Community Preservation Committee has consistently sent 10% of the reserves to Affordable Housing Trust every year. Affordable Housing Trust has received close to $1 million in a settlement. So currently the trust has around $1.7 million in it available to do rental assistance or to promote other affordable housing projects. So there's just more than one way to do this. It's not just using all CPC money. 1.7 is a lot of money, but it's not enough to build an entire development. The way to create more affordable housing in town is to work with developers and develop plans in order to include more affordable housing. Thank you.
Mr. Often.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, you know, CPC funding is from your tax dollars. So any discussion about like, this isn't tax money, I just don't really get. We talk a lot about affordability in Grafton. And one of the ways that we can make Grafton more affordable is by building some affordable housing. It's a pretty simple concept. It's difficult to practice in Grafton because there's a lot of, well, we don't want it here, or that's not the right thing. Or so I'm in strong support of the Affordable Housing Trust. I think they've got some important work to do in the coming years. I'm also and if we look at the production plan, it's clear that with Grafton building basically just detached single family homes, the amount of rental properties and low income housing that's available in Grafton is just, as a percentage of the overall housing stock, is going down year after year. So we've got to do something for sure. I guess the last thing that I'll say is we should be putting a rental assistance program together. We can't wait for people to reach out. It's pretty clear at this point that there's a need to help people out. You know, there's been several comments already about how much people are struggling right now. If we had a program put together that people could apply to, I guarantee there'd be people reaching out. So we need to help those renters to make sure that they're able to make those rent payments. Thank you.
And Ms. Roy.
Do you mind just repeating the question again one more time, please?
Not at all. Finding affordable housing in Massachusetts has and always will be a challenge for many families. Please share how you would prioritize affordable housing as it compares to other capital improvement and preservation projects.
Okay. So as far as I understand, affordable housing would not fall under our capital improvement plan, but it could fall under our Community Preservation Act. And those funds, they are required to give over 10% every year, but there's nothing stopping them from giving more than 10%. And given the environment we find ourselves in now, I think it would be really prudent of us to be considering more than 10%. As Ms. Thomas stated, the Affordable Housing Trust has $1.7 million in their fund right now, but that's not enough to build a development. And when we want to prioritize not only building affordable housing, but now take on this whole new project of a rental relief program, the more funds available to the Affordable Housing Trust at this time is imperative. So I would prioritize by taking a really good look at our Community Preservation Committee and seeing what is available and not trying to tie them up for long-term projects, and really make sure that we have the cash on hand to, again, prioritize the affordable housing need. Thank you.
Are there any rebuttals? Ms. Thomas?
Yes, I forget which candidate implied that we are not putting together a rental housing assistance plan, but we are. We've been working on it. Our town planner has been reaching out to other organizations. Unfortunately, it's not something you can just flip a switch and have it get done. It is complicated. You have to vet people that are asking for assistance. So we are looking to partner with an organization that can distribute that money. And there are other agencies that supply money for rental assistance. We applied for some through the CARES Act. It's CPC money is not the only money available, and there is money to get the program started. And also, I just need to point out, this rental assistance program is short term. It's not a long term program. It's just to
Okay,
help
thank
people
you.
get through this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question 4. Define the relationship between a town administrator and the select board. As a select board member, what would you like to see, start, stop, continue, or change regarding this relationship in Grafton? And we'll start with Ms. Thomas.
Can you repeat that question one more time?
Sure. Define the relationship between a town administrator and the select board first. This is a two-part question. That as a select board member, what would you like to see start, stop, continue, or change regarding this relationship in Grafton?
Okay. Well, the relationship between the select board and the town administrator is clearly defined in the charter. So that's where it all comes from. It's not something that, you know, we can just alter. The town administrator runs the day-to-day operation of the town. The select board serves as the executive board that works on policy. So it is not in the purview of the select board to handle day-to-day operations of the town. I think that I've had a wonderful relationship with our town administrator over the last 6 years. He works extremely hard and does a great job. But, you know, recently our board has not all worked well with our town administrator, as everybody knows. And there's a lot of things going on now. The board is broken and it's very sad. And so I think I would like to see the board work more closely with the town administrator again. And unfortunately, that has a lot to do with membership. I'm done.
Mr. Often.
Sure. So the way that I view the relationship between the select board and the town administrator is that the town administrator really does, he's responsible for the day-to-day management. He's got a lot of people reporting into him. He's looking after all of the nuts and bolts of the town operations. It's an important job. It's the select board's responsibility to manage the town administrator and to make policy and governance decisions. So it's an important role, but it is a different role. And it's one that I guess in terms of starting, I would like to see the select board members more consistently be getting the information they need to make, to have better conversations. And this would mean that they'd get the information pretty far in advance of their meetings, and all getting the same level of information consistently, so that they can have those productive discussions during their meetings. Let's see, not sure how to answer the rest of this. I guess I would stop the infighting in the meetings, as Ms. Thomas mentioned. There's just been a lot of tense, difficult discussions, and I'm not sure the best way to kind of overcome that. But the select board has to be working together as a team. And I'd like to think that I could bring the type of personality and demeanor that would help that cooperation within the board so that everybody's working towards the same ends. I'd like to continue the I'm not sure what I'd like to continue or change. I'm just going to yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Ms. Roy.
The select board is the executive body that provides guidance to the town administrator, who runs the day-to-day operations. They provide guidance by creating policies or updating existing policies as needs arise. One of the things I would like to stop seeing the select board do is abdicating their responsibilities over to the town administrator. An example of that recently was during the budget discussions. The town administrator asked the select board over several meetings whether or not we should be using stabilization or free cash to balance the FY21 budget. And the select board repeatedly did not have that conversation. It took 3 or 4 meetings for them to even engage in that, while the town administrator was clearly asking for guidance. Things I would like to see continue is creating policies that will help enhance our communication with not only the town administrator, but our residents and the members of the board. Things I would change would be a lot of the interpersonal things that we're seeing play out week to week that really needs to stop. It's hurting Grafton and we deserve better. Thank you.
And Ms. Stock.
Thank you. So yes, the select board is the executive body, but we don't manage the town administrator. He manages the town and we hire that person to do so. We don't have the education, the certification, nor the professional experience that our town administrator and other town employees have to do their business. We are volunteers that receive a very small stipend that can go back to the community to do the business of our town. So I think we need to let the town administrator do what it is that he's supposed to do. With regards to what we would start, when I was on the school committee, we used to get a weekly update from the superintendent every Friday. I appreciated it. Everything that came out came to every single member, and it was just a recap. It just let us know what was going on in the community, and if there was red flags, there were red flags. We also, if any member of the school committee asked for a question of the superintendent, it went to everybody. And we don't get that right now, and I'd like to do that. In terms of stop, I would like to stop the adversity on the committee as well. And it isn't just this past year, it's been going on for a long time. And that's one of the reasons I ran last year, was because I was hoping that I could come on and we could be working 5 people in the best interest of the town. And in terms of change, I have proposed some policies. They mirror those that are apply right now to the school committee. And I introduced another one on social media. So those are the changes that I'd like to see going forward.
Thank you. Are there any rebuttals? Mr. Often?
Yeah, thank you. I've had a chance to think about this a little bit more. I guess one of the things that I would change is just the kind of blind trust in our administrator. I think it's a little bit of a cop-out to just say, well, he manages the whole town, so the select board doesn't really have much responsibility with regards to directing things or managing the town administrator. I just don't buy that. If you don't want to do the job, you shouldn't be on the select board. To me, a big part of that is actually managing the town administrator and trying to create a sense of what the priorities are in terms of town operations. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Ms. Thomas?
Yeah, I don't think that that's true. I don't think that we give the town administrator free rein. I think it is a relationship. I think there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of discussions. And we did talk about the stabilization many times. And if we're not talking about it in a meeting, it's because it's been decided. A lot of the budget stuff was decided months and months ago. And it's just now being brought up again, but we've had those discussions. And so, I don't know, I'm really, I'm finding it so interesting the way that these perceptions are, because we do have, it's a working relationship. You work together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Question 5. Will you need to recuse yourself from any issues that might come before the select board? And we'll start with Mr. Often.
Yeah, simple answer to that question. I will not need to recuse myself from any agenda items that might come up on the select board agenda.
Ms. Roy?
I don't know how I can confidently say yes or no to that. There's nothing I can predict that I would need to recuse myself for. But then again, I don't know if some family member decides to open a business in town that I don't see coming, but 2 years from now it happens. But at this moment, this day and time, there's nothing that I can predict that I would need to recuse myself for. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stock?
I wouldn't have to recuse myself. I am concerned that Mr. Often may have to step down when the school budget is coming up, as his wife serves as the chair of that school committee currently. When I was on the school board, my husband was employed as a golf coach. I had to disclose that each and every year. And I also, anytime that budget item came up on the school budget, I recused myself. So I think it's a big responsibility, the entire school budget. And I think I'd like information from Math Ethics Commission in terms of whether or not he can vote on the budget.
Ms. Thomas?
In my 6 years of serving on the select board, I cannot remember ever having to recuse myself. I may be forgetting an instance, but I do not have any businesses or anything in town that I can say. Again, like Ms. Roy said, things can come up down the line, so I don't know. But at this point, it really has not been an issue for me at all.
Thank you. Are there any rebuttals? Mr. Often?
Yeah, I just wanted to say there is nothing in the conflict of interest law or any of the ethics training that I attend every single year that would indicate that I have to recuse myself from any discussions about any school-related matters. I'm disappointed that that came up as a thing, but I'll just address it directly. My wife is not employed by the town. She doesn't benefit from any of the contracts or any other school-related matters in a way that would prevent me from voting on anything. Thank you.
Ms. Stock?
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. As I said, my husband was an employee of the district, so that's probably the reason why. I've had that question asked of me though, Matt, I have to say that. So that's why I brought it up here right now. But I thank you for the explanation completely.
Thank you. Question 6. Describe your negotiation style and strategy, and give an example of a time you successfully negotiated professionally or on behalf of a town entity. And we'll start with Ms. Roy.
I can't say I have ever negotiated professionally or on behalf of a town entity before. My negotiation skills are probably new and they do need some work, but I don't think that prevents me from being a member of the select board. I think if anything, that's going to give me the opportunity to help think about a different way to negotiate or come up with new alternatives that have probably been overlooked or forgotten about. The most negotiating I really do is with my kids at home, so I would be excited to learn some new skills. But other than that, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stock?
Yes, I've had a number of occasions where I've had to negotiate, both when as a school committee member, when we negotiated union contracts, and obviously in my role as an AVP at WPI, I've been had to negotiate a number of things, contracts and employee contracts. I will give you a specific example. When you asked that question, the very first thing that popped into my head was, I think I mentioned it earlier, when we had the overcrowding situation in the schools and we had a middle school vote. That was what there'd been a committee that had been formed, they'd done it, they'd done the information, etc. We were galvanizing across the town, letting people know and asking for it. It was defeated. And I was, it was devastating to the people that were really looking forward to it. But the next day, I ended up down at the old Grafton News office with Charlie Bolak and a few of the other people that were on the no side of this equation. And we finally had a conversation, said, what is it that you objected to and what can we do to overcome that? And that's when they said, if you've got a population, a crowding population that's coming up through the elementary school, you need to address it at the elementary school level first. And that's what we did. Committee was formed. We informed the town through a lot of different ways, and that passed. So I'm proud of that negotiations and reaching across the aisle.
Ms. Thomas.
Yeah, I think my negotiating style is I'm always going prepared and organized, armed with data. I'm straightforward and I'm honest. I've participated in the mediation with Pulte, as we mentioned earlier, with Affordable Housing Trust. I negotiated the TA contract 3 years ago, and I negotiated the TA contract this year. This actually gives me an opportunity to clear up a lot of misinformation that's been going around. 3 years ago, as I just said, I renegotiated town administrator's contract. That also was 1 year early. The timing is not unusual. And in fact, the reason for the timing is that when you don't have money to offer, you offer job security. So if you cannot offer an increase in salary, it makes sense to offer an extended time on a contract. We have a very experienced TA who is credentialed with the International City Managers Association. It was in the best interest of our town to keep our town administrator. There's lots of articles you can look up in the Telegram Gazette and the Globe about government employees are retiring. There's a shortage of TA. Our TA is paid significantly less than other communities. We're also in the middle of a pandemic. I'm thankful we have an experienced TA. Contract negotiations typically include an automatic bump. I negotiated out that automatic bump. It is now a performance-based increase in that second year. Everything is performance-based. It is up to. It is not an automatic. I think that keeps getting lost on social media. There's no guarantee there'll be an increase at all.
Time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And lastly, Mr. Often.
Yes, thank you for the question. I guess my negotiation style really is based on starting with a partnership orientation. So all parties in a negotiation will do their research, will bring the same or maybe different, but share data so that we're all looking at the same information, and to try to identify, what the goals are for the negotiation. Going in with that shared set of data, having done the research on best practices and whatever the kind of important parameters are of the negotiation, and having that partnership orientation allows you to try to negotiate something where everybody gets a little bit of what they need, but typically, nobody gets everything that they need. I guess as an example, I will bring up just this week, Finance Committee did have a significant concern with the use of stabilization in our budget. The committee came on Wednesday night with a plan to do some reductions. And we had some lengthy discussion about the impacts of using stabilization. We put together a plan for looking at different budget options. I had some concerns about that plan, so I decided to get input from our budget stakeholders. So my way of doing that was to reach out to the town administrator, to invite him to our meeting, to get him to engage with the finance committee. I was able to do that and also bring in the next day the superintendent. So, I was able to bring in that sense of partnership to make sure that we were addressing as a finance committee and as the budget stakeholders, that significant concern, so that we had a more long-term approach to our budgeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any rebuttals? Then we'll go on to this is our last question before closing statements. There is a bill before the Massachusetts legislature that would create a local option for towns to adopt ranked choice voting for local elections. Do you support ranked choice voting for Grafton's local elections? And we'll start with Ms. Stock.
I'm sorry, that's not one I'm familiar with at all. I know we have another open rule petition, but a home petition, but I don't know what that one is.
Ms. Thomas.
Can you clarify, is the rank choice is for just local elections, or is it for statewide and federal elections as well?
This is about a bill before the Massachusetts legislature that would create a local option for towns to adopt ranked choice voting for local elections. Do
Okay.
you,
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Yes, I definitely support the idea of ranked choice voting, especially in the state and national level. I'm not sure exactly how it would come down to the local level, but in that option, certainly ranked choice voting, if your top candidate doesn't get the same, you can go to number 2 and down to number 3. So you're able to vote for more than one, and maybe that person gets in. So yeah, I support ranked choice voting for sure.
Mr. Often.
Yeah, I support ranked choice voting. It really helps a voter. It helps a voter express most accurately, I think, what their preferences are in terms of candidate choice. And I won't say much more than that, but as a general law, I do support it. I think it's a more efficient way to express the will of the voters. So I do support it.
Thank you. Ms. Roy.
I also support ranked choice voting, and I can give a personal example as to why. Back in the fall, when Grafton had its special election, I actually pulled papers to run in that election. At that time, I was pretty unknown, and I was running in that election because I wanted to gain some campaign experience. At the time, there was only one other candidate, and I thought it would be great. When a third candidate jumped in, I then bowed out of that race because I knew any votes that I would get in that election could negatively affect one of the other candidates. And I didn't want to gain experience while negatively affecting another person. But had we had ranked choice voting, I would have been able to stay in that campaign and see how I did. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any rebuttals? Ms. Stock.
So obviously Google helps, and the comments here helped me to understand what ranked choice voting is. So yes, I can see the benefits of it. I'm not certain it's something that would apply here to Grafton. I saw the state of Maine has done it, but they've only done it for federal and state. They haven't done it on local elections. So be interesting to see how this goes forward and whether it becomes an issue here in the town.
Thank you. We'll now go to closing statements. You each have a minute, and we'll start with Mr. Often.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting, and thank you to the other candidates and people watching for spending some time with me and the other candidates this evening. Voters have a very important choice to make in this election. I believe it will shape the culture of the select board for several years to come. I have the leadership and the experience needed to help Grafton navigate through the troubled waters ahead. I have the ability to influence, collaborate, and manage to bring about a more prosperous Grafton. I have broad knowledge of municipal finance and operations that will allow me to be effective on day one of the job. I have the hard work ethic, perseverance, and passion that the town needs right now. I hope you'll trust me with one of your votes on June 23rd. I will not disappoint. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Roy.
I want to thank everybody for spending the evening with us tonight. And I'm asking for your vote on June 23rd because Grafton cannot afford to repeat the last 3 years. I'm the only candidate that will bring change, energy, and enthusiasm to the job. I promise I'll be the hardest working member on the select board, and I won't rest until the job is done. Grafton is not living up to its full potential, and I want to get us back on track. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. We need to stop the insanity. We deserve better, and what I've been witnessing over the last few months, I promise I will be the change that Grafton is looking for. I don't come with any agendas. I just want to get Grafton back on track, and I humbly ask for your vote on June 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stock.
Thank you. Thank you again to the League for hosting this forum. I truly believe that it's the right time for me to step up once more and bring the full range of my abilities, excuse me, towards making our town government work for the entire community. As we look to what's ahead, we need to put in the work now to secure our town's future. Promoting economic development, supporting infrastructure and sustainability efforts, bringing proven positive leadership to the board are key ways to do so. We need leaders who can tackle every problem that comes their way and a board that can fully operate no matter the issue at hand and cooperate. This will help Grafton as it heads into its next chapter by creating a stable, safe, and prepared community. I love this town, and community service is what fuels me. This passion, combined with my experience, positive leadership, and commitment to community engagement, will continue to serve me well on the select board. The time is now. I feel called upon once more to be part of the solution. I ask for your vote to serve as your representative on the select board with a vote on Tuesday, June 23rd, or by mail-in beforehand. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's Ms. Thomas.
Hi, yes, thank you to the League of Women Voters and also to everybody watching at home. Thank you for your consideration for one of your 2 votes on June 23rd. I'm asking for your vote so that I can continue to serve this town that I love. I believe wholeheartedly in public service, and I've demonstrated that in my countless hours and years of volunteer service to this town. I'm experienced, hardworking, thoughtful, balanced, and professional. I'm willing to listen and incorporate input into my decisions. This is a really important time right now. Your vote really does matter a lot because it will affect the board for many, many years to come. We are at kind of a crossroads, and I hope that people really take time to learn about the different candidates. I promise to continue to stand up to the unprofessional behavior that we have on the board today. Please remember to request an absentee ballot if you feel like you don't feel safe to go vote on June 23rd. I do believe I'm the best candidate to continue on the select board. Again, I have 6 years experience, more than the rest of the board combined. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you. This concludes the Select Board Forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, we'd like to thank all the candidates for their participation.
Welcome back to the Grafton League of Women Voters Candidates Forum. We will now meet our town moderator candidates. Before we get started with that, I would just like to tell you a little bit about what the town moderator does. So the job description for the town moderator, they shall be the presiding officer of the town meeting, shall regulate its proceedings, decide all questions of order, and shall have such other powers and duties as may be provided by that office, by general law, by this charter, by bylaw, and other vote of the town meeting. And the town moderator also appoints members of the following committees: the Finance Committee, the Charter Review Committee, also appoints the building committees, such as the DPW facility and the Library Planning and Building Committee. And right now, I will turn this over to our moderator, Amy Smith. Thank you.
Tonight, we have 2 candidates for the town moderator position. It's 1 3-year term. We'll start with opening statements, and we'll start with Mr. Conker.
Thank you very much, Amy. Appreciate it. And I appreciate the League of Women Voters holding this venue so that we can try to get more voters involved and interested in town politics and what we're doing. I just want to give a brief introduction of myself and why I think I want the position and why I think I'm qualified. I have been a lifelong resident of Grafton. My family has been involved here many years. My grandfather was actually the chief psychiatrist and administrator of the Grafton State Hospital for 40 years. So know the town well. I have 2 children in the Grafton schools. One is a graduating senior going off to University of Richmond and a freshman going into her sophomore year. And I'm married with my wife, Beth, here, who was also active in Apple Tree Arts. So we've been doing a lot of different sports and different things within the town. As far as myself, I am an attorney. I work in healthcare right now. I also have my master's in public administration, which is for government. And I have been active in the town doing different things. I have been the deputy town moderator in the past. I am the moderator of the Grafton Water District currently. I'm the Grafton Youth Lacrosse Association's treasurer. I've also served on the town administrative search committee, credit union board, things like that. So I'm hoping that my rich life experience and education and family life here in Grafton will lend itself to being a good moderator. I want more people involved with the town meeting. I want them to be vested in this town. And I think if we can have a respectful dialogue where different opinions get out, then the voters can make the best decision they can on the votes when they get to the town meeting. So I thank you all for doing this and helping us get the word out. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Spinney.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bruce Spinney. I'll be running for town moderator. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this evening. Any opportunity to get in front of an audience and the public is always warranted. I believe the town moderator should have the experience and knowledge of what I think are the three primary facets of town meeting. Having served for 5 years on the planning board, who submit nearly all of our zoning bylaws articles for review. I've served for 3 years on the finance committee, which of course have a comprehensive review structure of nearly all of the articles that come before town meeting, as well as 5 years of experience on the select board, which of course create the documents and all of the underlying provisions before it goes to the town meeting body. I think understanding how the warrant is created is kind of instrumental in being able to conduct and run a very good and efficient meeting. Also, as mentioned before, the finance committee actually, or the town moderator appoints the finance committee, of which I've served for many years. And I think that I have invaluable knowledge for appointing the best people for that critical role. Also, during my tenure, my 15 years of serving the town, I have a wealth of experience actually chairing very visible and important meetings on the different committees I've served on, similar to town meeting. As well as experience in dealing with some of the more contentious and large crowds, and that happens from time to time. I'm also familiar with most of the underlying facets of the municipal government. To be quite honest, I'm not sure if you could find many people that are more familiar and have spent as much time with the town bylaws, the charter, and all the other complicated rules and regulations that we use to govern our small town. If elected as a moderator, you have a well-run and efficient town meeting that will make all of Grafton proud. I appreciate your vote on June 23rd. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question 1. Town moderator duties include being responsible for filling any finance committee vacancies. What are the key qualifications for an applicant to that committee? And we'll start with Mr. Spinney.
Sure. So the rotation of different finance committees as you go to the annual town meeting in May and you turn over 3 and move to 3. There is, of course, an advertising period that could happen. It doesn't happen now. Typically, if members are getting off, then of course we'll advertise and we move forward. If members are going to stay, we typically let the members stay as they are. Some of the qualifications, of course, are you have to actually want to do the job. You got to make sure that you understand the hours that are invested by finance committee. In the spring in the budget season, it's a fairly substantial amount of time that's required. Of course, during the review process, you have multiple candidates. Finding and selecting the best candidate will have a list of qualifications that I would look at. Accounting backgrounds, experience in actual municipal governments, familiarity with town meeting, and the role that finance committee plays, the instrumental role that finance committee plays in the meeting process. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that you actually advertise for these positions too in every facet that you can. So whether it's using print media, which you of course have to do, and the town meeting's website, but also following up with social media and reaching out to people who are in attendance year in and year out at town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conca. Oh, you're muted, Mr. Conca.
You're all set.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's very important to reach out to the folks and citizens of Grafton in order to get them interested in this. The FinCom is a very important committee. It really, the recommendations they make are looked at by the people in the town and town meeting to see they've taken the deep dive, they understand it. When I was a town manager, I used to help the moderator of that town look into the different kind of resumes that we would get and people who understand the budget. You know, getting that right fit and making sure that the committee is working together well is very important. You know, in my career, I've interviewed hundreds and thousands of positions in order to get a good team together. And I would do that the same with the moderator. The moderator appointing the FinCom, working with other committees, getting the right people interested who are there. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 2. Are there things that you would do differently from the current town moderator? And we'll start with you, Mr. Conca.
You know, I think Ray runs a pretty good meeting. I think what we need to strive a little bit more for is a more efficient and effective town meeting. Town meetings have been going on a long time, and I hear time and time again from people that they can't say that, like they have jobs, they have kids, they have this or that. I think we need to be able to streamline those meetings as much as possible while still getting both or many different points of view out so that people can make the best educated decision that they can. So working to make it more efficient, more effective, yet allowing that dialogue that's so necessary happen will be very important. And I think we need to streamline maybe the introduction of the town meeting. I think the last time it took almost 35, 40 minutes to get it going. I think those are the kinds of things we can look at to try to improve. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spinney.
Sure. So like Dan said, Ray's been doing this a long, long time. He runs a very, very efficient meeting. I feel that some of the things that I would do different are a little bit more, you know, my generation to it. I think, as Dan alluded to, we need to make sure that there's outreach there. We've had some town meetings in the past which have, you know, had less than 1% of our voting base actually attend. And it's a fairly large community, and you kind of want a little bit more participation than we've had. So I think outreach is something that the town moderator should take a role in. I believe that making sure that people are surveyed as to why they don't attend. There is a warrant article on this year's warrants that was submitted. I believe her name is Lydia. And she wants to move the town meeting date to Saturday, which is something that we've looked at in the past. It's a citizen's petition, and the argument is that a lot of our senior population does not want to stay out till 11:30 on a Monday night for a town meeting that goes excessively long. I think we need to look at those type of things and making sure that if it is moved to Saturday, that we're going to get the attendance that we're hoping for. But addressing those concerns, I think, is going to be a core function of the moderator moving forward and trying to get increased participation in town government.
Thank you. Are there any rebuttals?
No, I'd just like to add, I agree with Bruce. I think we have to carefully look at the Saturday morning. We want to make sure that we can get more people, not less, to the town meeting. So I think that is one way we can look at it. I think we need to feel the pulse of the citizenry to see, do they want it to move to that Saturday? I think anything we can do to improve attendance would be helpful.
Thank you. Question 3. What are the pros and cons of our process for approving the budget, where amendments can only be made on items that are held? Would you continue using this process? And if not, what other process would you use? We'll start with Mr. Spinney.
So the way we handle the budget now is essentially the town clerk reads off the entire budget and all the line items that go to it. And if a particular participant in town meeting has a question or a concern or wants to make a modification to a particular line item, say they would say hold. So if it gets to, say, let's say the police department and they don't feel that budget is sufficient or what have you, they'll hold it. And then at the end, they'll take all the holds and move them to the side, and we'll vote on everything that went through the hold. Now, this is as efficiency is concerned, this is a model as we had many years where there was never any concern with the budget, and this was a fast way to kind of go through it. And for a long time while we did this, we had very few holds whatsoever. Where you kind of run into that complication if somebody wants to make a modification, well, you're not allowed to go and reconsider a previous motion that's passed a town meeting in our town. So if you pass the budget and you leave out just a little snippet of the budget, which has a certain dollar value that's attached to it, you're not allowed to go back and take it from other departments previously to fill that gap. And of course, when you leave town meeting, you have to have a balanced budget. So it makes it difficult in situations where there's a lot of contentiousness around the budget. For example, this year, having followed the finance committee meetings, there is some contention on where we should pull money from. And there's also 2 budgets on the warrant article. So you have your normal budget and you have your contingency budget. And there's a lot of focus on, what money should be used from what well to make sure we bridge the gap, so to speak. So in this year, if I was running it, and I'm not, of course, but I would make sure that I'm in constant contact with finance committee and reviewing their recommendations to make sure as we move forward with the budget that we don't leave ourselves hamstrung to be able to move stuff from account to account on town meeting floor. It's not typically something you want to do. You want to make sure you go to that meeting with a budget that's intact that everybody's going to agree with, and at least have finance committee.
Mr. Spinney.
Oh,
Sorry.
Go ahead, Dan. I apologize.
No problem.
Oh, no problem. I think you're right. We've done this a long time in the town, and it has run fairly efficiently. Right now, the contingency budget is going to make it a little bit more complicated. I still think it's an efficient way to get it done. I think we may just have to slow the reading a little bit to give people time to say they object or they want it held. They need to be able to think through. It's a little more complicated this year, but I think it has worked fairly well in the past. And I think you do. You look to the FinCom. The FinCom has taken the deep dive into this budget. They understand what's going on with it. With contingency involved, it may be a little bit more complex, but I think it runs efficiently this way.
Thank you. Are there any rebuttals? Question 4. While we recognize your right to free speech, should the town moderator speak to an issue at hand while moderating? Mr. Conca.
No, that's the simple answer. I believe the moderator's job is to facilitate good, honest, and respectful dialogue. This is how you get options and opinions and solutions onto the floor. You cannot say, I as moderator think this way, or I believe this. The moderator needs to be neutral. Can't come there with agenda, or can't come there with conflicts. They're supposed to be there to facilitate that dialogue and make the decisions known. So while I think I can help move them, I do not want, in my opinion, dominating or overpowering anybody's other opinion. I'm one vote, they're one vote. No one is more important than the other. So no, I would not think so. Thank you.
Mr. Spinney.
I actually have a passage that I highlighted in town meeting time, which kind of alludes to this. I'm just going to read it just because it's a fundamental principle by which, of course, I would conduct myself as a moderator. The moderator may speak in the debate, but it is a great mistake to do so. While he is presiding, unless it appears he alone is in possession of some relevant or significant information that is thoroughly objective in nature and which ought to be imparted on the meeting, which essentially just means that if I know a fact is indeed wrong, or if there's something that would compromise further decision or something like that, then I may interject in a debate to make sure that's brought forward. But by and large, the town meeting should have absolutely nothing to do with the actual motion on the floor and the debate that's taking place. You kind of go down that road at great peril, but if there is something that is profound that you need to make sure that the town meeting is aware of, and you're the only holder of that particular information, then you need to make sure they know and don't let them misstep. Thank you.
Thank you. Any rebuttals?
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit to that. I agree with Bruce. If someone is misstating, misinformation needs to be corrected. We're there to help facilitate true, honest, respectful dialogue. If someone's going off the rails, needs to be curtailed. Done that in many meetings. I've spent my last couple decades of career correcting physicians in large gatherings. Not an easy thing to do a lot of times, but you need to correct things and move forward. It's good, honest dialogue is what's so important.
Question 5. Do you believe it's appropriate for the Finance Committee to propose amendments to motions, particularly the budget, but others as well, on the town meeting floor? Mr. Spinney.
The quick answer, of course, is yes. I mean, the charter decides, or at least in Grafton anyways, the roles of Finance Committee. And one of those roles is not only providing recommendations, but providing alternative paths by which to handle the budget. It's a core and fundamental principle of what they do. Now, that being said, they engage in a process that's very lengthy, in a public hearing process. They're in constant communications with all the departments that put forth their budget through the town administrator. They have several meetings with the town administrator and the select board and the school committee and all the integral players in our budget. So I would hope that nearly all of those things get ironed out in that lengthy process over the course of 5 or 6 months of the budget process, that it doesn't take going to town meeting and actually differing an opinion actually on town meeting floor. But it's well within their right. They, as a member of Finance Committee, they don't give up their, their seat in the legislature. The moderator certainly does, but not FinCom.
Thank you. Mr. Conca.
I agree. They do have that right. I would hope that things would be worked out beforehand. And if there were questions or concerns, that they would be worked out beforehand. I think introducing something in the middle of a town meeting from FinCom can get confusing if it hasn't been worked out. So while I agree they have that right, I would certainly hope that they were working with town administrator, other boards, other questions have all been worked out, because I think it causes confusion when they start speaking on the floor, changing things, getting amendments. So hopefully that would be done. But there are certain times when that is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any rebuttals? And that was our final question. It's time for closing statements. And we'll start with Mr. Conca.
Sure. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time too. I know it must be giving up a night for yourself, so I do appreciate that very much. People have asked me why I want to do this, and I want to do this because I want to give back more to the town. This town has been very good to me and my family. I love this town. I bring a wealth of experience with it, from a former town manager, from different boards, from education, to a family member here in this community. I love this community. I want to give back to it. I think the town meeting is vital to making a good town. It's the purest form of democracy. I want to get more people there, and I want good ideas to move this town forward. So please vote for whomever. I want everyone to vote on June 23rd, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Spinney.
I'd like to echo Dan's sentiment on thanking the Women Voters for hosting this evening. I know it's a Sunday night and it's getting close on 9 o'clock. I just want in closing to make sure that I talk a little bit about myself. I lived in town for about 18 years. I have 3 children in the school system and a wife who's also a very active participant in, for this first year in municipal government, but in the many organizations that run behind the scenes that make this town, great. PTG and things of that nature, Apple Tree Arts, the list is very, very long. I think that, in my 15 years of actually serving on the different boards or committees, this was another step that I could take. When Ray decided that he was going to vacate the seats, I certainly thought about it long and hard to run for this particular seat. I think it's kind of the next logical step for me in town government. And I want to continue to serve. This is something that I always enjoy doing. I put a lot of time and energy into it. I think I'm very, very good at it. And I think that will show when it comes time to running efficient meetings. So I would appreciate your vote on June 23rd. I hope as many people come out as possible. And I hope everybody's grabbing their absentee ballots if they don't want to go to the actual polling places. Make sure you contact the clerk's office and they'll tell you exactly what to do. Thank you very much.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. So that concludes tonight's forum. I'd like to thank our moderator, Amy Smith of the League of Women Voters of Topsfield, Boxford, Middleton, and she's also on the state board for the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts. Our candidates for select board were Donna Stock, Jennifer Thomas, Matthew Often, Colleen Roy, and our candidates for moderator, Daniel Conca and Bruce Spinney. And just a reminder that this program is going to be shown on the local cable access channels, Charter 191, Verizon Channel 33 until the election. We're also planning on posting this on our Facebook page as well. And as Bruce and Dan both talked about, please be sure to come out and vote. We have town meeting on Saturday, June 20th, and we have the town election on Tuesday, June 23rd. Voting by mail is encouraged by the town clerk's office. Applications were mailed to all the voters in late May. If you need an application, please go to the Town of Grafton website and the town clerk's page on there. So thank you very much to everyone and have a wonderful evening.